if you have a magic wand, what would you do that would change the situation in Pakistan and there would be poverty alleviation?
Immediately put up at least 3 large-scale solar plants.
Probably 90% or maybe very large portion of these IPPs, they belong to those people in power.
So yes, there is elite capture in Pakistan. There's no doubt.
News about a rape of a very unfortunate, and I'm not sure it's a rumor or not, but somehow it has become quite a big issue.
The truth is that no such incident took place.
Is General Asim Munir going to get an extension?
And I said it's too soon to tell, Dr.
Hello and very warm welcome from our London studios. I'm Sohail Qureshi with my program Sharp Edge. And I have a very special guest from Pakistan who's joining us on a video link. A dedicated, patriotic Pakistani, very well educated, and who has been in the echelons of power for the last 15, 20 years since he started taking part in politics. He also comes from an illustrious political background. So without further ado, I will introduce you to Khurram Dastgir, who is the member of National Assembly of Pakistan, who is joining us on the video link. Thank you very much, Khurram Sahib, for joining us. Thank you very much for coming to our show. It's my routine here on this show, basically to bring the brightest minds and brightest intellectuals of Pakistan, especially with a view to promote better Pakistan to the world. And I was when I was researching you, so I was very impressed that you have a very good educational background from cadet college and then to Maine. The winters of Maine must have really made you a bit snowy, and then you went to CIT. So just tell us a little bit about your background, your education, your family background, and where you are now.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Doctor, very kind of you to invite me to your program. I will simply say that very fortunate, and Allah Almighty has blessed me that I was born here in Gujranwala, where I'm speaking to you from. And so my early schooling is from here. Then I went to Cadet College Hassan Abdal. And in both places, there was hardly any tradition of going abroad for studying, but somehow I ended up first at Bowdoin College, where I studied economics, and then at Caltech, where I studied engineering. So the lesson here is, for many young people, is to never feel that your life has to be all pre-programmed. And if you are unable to do one thing, the whole thing comes crashing down. I'm a very good example of someone who never thought, while being a young teenager, that I would be able to study at these illustrious institutions. But I think two things: my parents' support was with me, and a support of a very special kind, in which they never really pressured me to study anything. Usually it's a pressure in Pakistan saying, you have to be an engineer or a medical doctor or an MBA. But my parents took a very liberal view, and they said, study what you want to study. So if I studied engineering, it was entirely of my own volition, because unlike my pre-med colleagues, I never liked biology. So I liked, physics and mathematics. So I ended up, and since graduation, I came back because of my parents' desire. I'm their only son, so they think that, you've been out first at Hassan Abdal and then in the US studying for nearly a decade. So I came back and spent the first few years just looking after the family business. And because of my father's long involvement in politics, beginning in the 70s, he too was a member of the National Assembly 4 times. So he was, again, a long career in politics. So I followed him, and after a first hurdle, which I couldn't cross in 2002, I was continuous in parliament for 15 years. I again faced a hurdle in this year's elections and couldn't succeed. But that's another story altogether. But I've been very fortunate. I think it's to be able to represent my fellow citizens has been a tremendous privilege. And to be able to work, I'm really grateful to my party's leadership also for entrusting me to these very important portfolios, which gave me a very wide experience in governance, international exposure. So, as again said, out of nowhere, maybe I was, my commerce portfolio was somewhat expected because I was chair of the National Assembly Standing Committee on Commerce for 2008-2013. But then, as fate would have it, I went to defense in 2017, and while being there, even served briefly as Pakistan's foreign minister. And again, when the PDM government came in 2022, had probably the most challenging job in the federal government, which is to be Minister for Power, which is electricity. So very wide experiences have come my way. Hopefully, I've learned the right lessons, Doctor.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I think that's very helpful. I had an opportunity to meet your late father a few times because I was a doctor in Islamabad in Pakistan Institute of Medical Sciences, and I met him a couple of times there. And then I was one of the doctors who will be on duty in the M&A lodges. So what a towering personality. And very, as we in Urdu, we say, khush akhlaq. So,
yes.
So I think that you are continuing the legacy. I can see that. So coming back to the issues of Pakistan, the power is a very, very important and crucial matter, or for that matter, for any country. And with your background, I don't think it used to be called STEM at that time, with economy and engineering. I think you probably are one of the few Pakistani young or youngish politicians who can actually work on the development of the infrastructure, and for that you need power. So just enlighten us what your views are on the current electricity bills and the gas bills and all that. What do you think, if you're thinking out of the box, if you have a magic wand, what would you do that would change the situation in Pakistan and there would be poverty alleviation?
Yeah, I'll begin with a certain irony that I was probably the first electrical engineer ever to become electricity minister. So at least I had the background. I had the technical background. Wasn't too fazed by difficult numbers or calculations. But the reason I say this is that it's probably the toughest job in the federal government is that electricity is the largest and widest service that the federal government provides to its citizens. It's tremendously wide. It's right from Gawadar all the way to Chitral, and we are in every household, in every street, in every city, and therefore the issues of first reliable provision of electricity, one, but even greater issue which arose later. First, the prices of not enough electricity back in 2013, and then we realized that we had too much electricity, which was expensive. So the current crisis is that whoever is the minister or the prime minister, they have a large capacity of very expensive and uneconomical electricity, which they can use if they want to. But a reasonably priced electricity is still much less than what is demanded. There's also this issue of, because of low economic growth, our electricity demand has been lagging behind. So there also we face a crisis. But if a magic wand I have, as you have handed me, So I will take full use of the magic wand and immediately put up at least 3 large-scale solar plants in Pakistan, at least of 600 megawatts each, in order to bring down the average price of electricity that we produce. Because the consumers' demand, and of course consumers are not only my compatriots but my voters also, are very upset over expensive electricity. So the first charge that I see is to bring down the price of electricity. And the way to do it is to use alternative energy. And solar energy now has plummeted in price internationally over the last decade. And particularly in the last 2 years, it has further plummeted. It has become very economically viable. It has certain technical issues. But I think the first thing I would do is to start putting up large-scale solar plants across the country. Particularly offers a very interesting choice for Balochistan and rural Sindh and rural Punjab, where it's very difficult to take transmission lines, very expensive business to take transmission lines to these areas. So there you can have these sort of microgrids based upon solar, and the government of Pakistan can begin to provide electricity to its most far-flung areas. So it will have a very vital development function. And particularly now that we want to, through CPEC, want to connect Gawada to the rest of the country. So along the way, one doesn't need to put up a very long and expensive and difficult to maintain transmission lines. One can have these microgrids along the way and have the whole pathway lighted at all times. So that's the first thing. The second would be
more like a local and regional network.
Local and regional grids. Yeah. Because most consumers who just get an electricity bill are very upset by it. Don't really realize, and if I can take a little bit of the time, the electricity business has composed of 5 distinct parts. The first part is actually generating the electricity. The second part is transmitting that electricity from wherever it's being generated to where the demand is. The third part is distribution, how to distribute the. So distribution is the part that the consumers of Pakistan are most concerned with. It's a distribution part which sends them the bill, but it's only one of 5. The fourth part is also a very crucial now subject, which is the power finance. It's a huge transaction through electricity that takes place through the Ministry of Power and through the Ministry of Finance, nearly 3,000 billion rupees in most recent years. So that making sure, and a lot of it are loans and loans financing and where the money is coming from. Some of it is international. So that's another separate subject. And the fifth part, which I realized much to my surprise, of how difficult is the business of regulating electricity. So the regulator that we have, based upon some international practices some years back, is NEPRA. And NEPRA it's another separate can of worms. So these 5 parts of it, if I can just very simply explain, each requires a tremendous amount of energy, focus, attention, of course, better management. Part of it is, again, what we realize, and I'll just say the distribution part, because that's where consumers are, is that the crisis there is a crisis of governance. So my second magic wand, if you would hand me such a thing, would be to start fixing the governance in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan and rural Sindh. Because these areas are simply not paying their bills. We supply them electricity and they don't pay. They pay very little. And we are unable, as a government, to retrieve the bills for the electricity that we have sold them. And it is causing another set of problems, because in many areas where we don't pay the bills, we don't supply electricity. We supply only a very small part. And they are always up in arms that we don't have electricity. And the other issue is that unless we are able to improve our governance, these areas, which is the north, the west, and the south of the country, they will continue to need very large amounts of money each year. So, yeah, so it's a question of governance also. It's not just a question of bringing better management in distribution governance, although that also be very helpful. But if you look at Pakistan and look at areas where one doesn't retrieve electricity bills, you will realize it's actually a map of bad and relatively good governance in the country. So wherever there is relatively good governance, essentially from Islamabad to Multan, you get electricity bills. Wherever there is less governance, you don't get it. So that the second one would be to improve governance overnight. And by doing that, we will be able to plug many of the holes. Then there's also this issue of capacity payments, which was much in the news recently. But unlike the extraordinary importance and hoopla surrounding the electricity payments, it can only have a marginal effect on if we are trying to reduce the electricity bills. Electricity bills will be reduced most effectively first by start introducing radically cheap power as part of the mix. The second part will be improved governance, so we at least start to stanch our losses that happen in different parts of the country.
Well, thank you. I think you have very comprehensively and very clearly articulated the five-pronged strategy, basically. But I think all of these strategies, definitely there has to be a vision behind, and there has to be political will and the governance. But the most important thing, those policies, long-term policies, they must be followed up. And what we have seen in the recent years, at least 20, 30 years, so every single government that comes, somehow, one way or another, they blame the previous government. Taking the lead from there, the capacity of producing surplus or X amount of energy, we have been hearing a lot about these IPPs and this kind of a circulation debt. So I think it'd be important to hear it from you, being a half technocrat and half politician, and of course, having lived and studied abroad. So what is this kind of a beast that we are unable to tame yet?
Dr. You're asking questions which your viewers might get bored by some comprehensive answers, but I'll try to answer as briefly as possible. The first is back our first crisis. We don't act until there's a crisis. So back in 93, 94, when first we started to get electricity shortages, the government tried to bring in, instead of government-owned plants, private investment. And what happened is that because of our lack of governance, the risk profile of Pakistan is always so high in compared with other international countries, is that we end up giving extraordinary concessions to investors. And that's not the first time, but it was the first time that it had a real consequence. And that was done because the erstwhile producer of electricity, which was Water and Power Development Authority, was suffering from its own crisis of governance issues and bad governance and mismanagement and inefficiencies. So we give that government, Benazir Bhutto's second government, gave extraordinary concessions, and they thought that, and again, a crucial error to make in energy planning, they thought oil would be cheap forever. And it wasn't. So they at that time, it seemed like a decent policy, although it had its severe flaws in how they were priced and how the cost of the plants was calculated. I think, again, there was much, that government has much to answer for. But they started a policy based upon the assumption of being cheap oil forever. And that assumption failed completely. The second assumption they made was that Pak rupee would be relatively stable. That it will lose value, but a long time. The Pak rupee has lost tremendous value, as you very well know. So these two key assumptions of Pak rupee remaining relatively stable or losing a short amount over a longer period. And second was that oil would be cheap. That made that policy a disaster because then the government also agreed to sort of give these what was called what are called capacity payments. So essentially, when the plant is not running, the government ensures payment so that those plants can at least service their debt. So a very minimal payment is agreed to. If you look at the actual numbers, although in Pak rupees they now look massive, but given that at that time it seemed that it was a reasonable thing to do. And over the years, those capacity payments have grown massive, again because of the devaluation of rupee. And of course, that over time, we only, as I said, act in a crisis. Instead of slowly updating our energy production. So we got stuck in the first wave in early 90s, then everything stopped. And that technology is now obsolete practically. It's too expensive. Its energy conversion rate, the efficiency is too low. But still we have a sovereign guarantee. So that's why these capacity payments are offered. The second reason we are stuck in this, which is again probably unique to Pakistan, is this very massive difference in our electricity demand between summer and winter. So we have, of the total demand that we have in summer, the peak demand is just over 32,000 megawatts. And 2/3 of it is just cooling load. The fans, the coolers, the air conditioners that run practically from April to late September. And then the demand goes down drastically. And in January, we can go down as low as 8,500 megawatts for the whole country. So in order to be able to produce 32,000 megawatts in late June, early July, which is the peak time, we have to have plants which we don't need to run in winter, in March or in February or in April. We need to have them up and running when we need them in the 6 weeks of peak summer load. And before the idle power kicks in because of the rains, belts. So in second week of July, it kicks in. So in just like 5 weeks till 7th of July, that's where the crisis is. You have to be able to produce enough electricity, which we don't need the rest of the year. So in order to keep those plants running, these the capacity payments are provided. So the first thing is financial and debt coverage. The second is, of course, our very wide difference in energy usage. So yes, that is a crisis because anyone logically looks at it, why are you paying plants when they are not producing electricity? So there are two ways of dealing with it. The first way has been tried. Hopefully, inshallah, Shahbaz Sharif's government has been able and successful in ending the agreements a bit early. A lot of agreements, which 30-year agreements, which happened in 1994, they are about or will expire soon. So they are being bought out by the government and say we will end it. So that capacity payment will reduce. But then there's also a very interesting complication. A lot of capacity payments is directed towards government-owned plants. So if you were to hand me a third wand, I would essentially decommission a lot of government-owned capacity, which is utterly obsolete, which government is unable to run. We have through 2 generation companies. In order to be able to reduce the capacity payments, at the moment, those plants and their staff are being paid strictly from the capacity. So, and just in the, I would say, very low probability that they will be run for 3 weeks in a year. So the government also has to decide the many plants it owns. The government owns some of the most advanced plants, which purport in last year when in government 4 LNG plants, which probably are still after 6 years state of the art, 61% efficiency, 62% efficiency. So government also owns those, but government also owns a lot of capacity that is obsolete and too expensive to run. So government needs to make a straightforward decision that we are going to de-accession and decommission those plants, and maybe convert them into alternative forms of energy. Maybe convert them into solar plants, offer them as solar plant capacity, which will have the dual advantage of not only reducing the electricity price, but also getting rid of capacity.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's very important and very good analysis and information that you've given to us, and the audience would really understand. I mean, once sovereign guarantees are given, and these probably investment are through the foreign direct investment, and it's very difficult to renege on them. And I think the successive government.
But Dr. This says it turned out to be a symposium on electricity.
No, I mean, I was thinking about there's so many questions to ask, but I think because, as I said, that the most important thing right now for Pakistani or people of Pakistan all over is the price hike, inflation, and that stems from the escalating electricity bills and the power bills. And I thought that I have to really extract some pearls of wisdom from you, from your experience. So I thought that is very important too. Just one.
These are not pearls. I'm very fond of quoting Ahmed Faraz, who said, "Dekho ye mere ख्वाब the, dekho ye mere zakhm hai. मैंने सब हिसाबे जा पर सरेआम रख दिया."
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I must say, coming from Gujranwala, which is the 5th largest city now, and started from 1881 to now, probably 2.5 million people, and from the city known for the wrestlers, and I'm sure that you must have done wrestling in your time as well, and your poetic taste is very exquisite. So I'm very happy to hear that. So
I'm delighted. And again, it's probably, I think viewers might be interested to know, comes from my mother.
Yes.
Who was a graduate even during 1950s.
Yes.
And was very fond of reading literature and poetry. And this is one of her legacies.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's really heartening to hear that. And I know that I have followed you in a couple of your interviews, and you very often really entertain your audience or even anchors with your very tasteful poetic description. So that's very good. And these
anchors are often shocked to hear poetry coming from politicians.
Yeah, exactly. These are maybe subtleties of personalities. So just one more question on IPP, and then we'll move on to the next topic. That one of the criticism about this entire IPP saga is this, that it is rumored, or I don't know whether there's some conspiracy theory machine behind it. And what it says is that probably 90% or maybe very large portion of these IPPs, they belong to those people in power, the higher elite, so to say, and they are from all political backgrounds. So, living in the Western countries, so there is a concept of conflict of interest. So the general perception is this, that these IPPs were created by the elite in such a manner that put kind of a cloak in front of the people. Nobody knows what's going on, who are the actual owners, what were the terms. And I'm glad that your government has actually decommissioned some of them. So just briefly, just tell us, is that true, or that, the majority of these IPP belong to people in power?
That was not true until 2018. Yes, most of the IPPs are owned by some of Pakistan's biggest business houses. But they are not generally in politics. But then in 2018 to 2022, there were at least three owners of IPPs in Imran Khan's cabinet.
Mhm.
And a fourth one was that whose very close family owned an IPP. So they finally made it to politics in between 2018 to 22. Were sitting in the cabinet. They were able to influence decisions. So yes, there is elite capture in Pakistan. There's no doubt about it. But when it comes to IPPs, I think there was less politics and more a question of these very large business houses with sophisticated expertise at their disposal, essentially being able to, I would say, out-negotiate the government at that time. And that's why I hinted at the fact that at the original 93, 94, there may have been certain issues regarding the exaggeration in the cost of the IPPs and how the debts were structured. And many of these, yes, indeed, in the name of capacity payments, have been able to get tremendous amounts of it. But they also have been providing a service to the people of Pakistan. It's not a one-way street. So the question is, now in front of us, after having these we have had three waves of IPPs. One was in 94, the second was in 2002 in the Musharraf era, and then the fifth was in 2014-15 when the Chinese IPPs came into line with CPEC. So the lesson for us is that instead of vilifying or demonizing the IPP owners, is for the state to raise its game, to be more sophisticated, to be more cognizant of where the public interest lies. So during my time at the Ministry of Energy, one of my long-term policies used to be that, and I will say it because it's pretty concise, that henceforth, no new electricity plant in Pakistan shall be based on info-fixed. Okay. That's it. That's the policy. So if we learn that, and then the second part of it was that no current contract with the IPP will be renewed upon expiry. So if these two policies are strictly followed, I think we will be able to get out of this fire. And now we have this lesson, the third lesson, which is very difficult to actually implement, is to conduct all our negotiations for new IPPs whenever they will take place in Pak rupee, not have a dollar exposure, because Pakistan's balance of payments crisis just exposes us to these issues, and then we commit ourselves, we give sovereign guarantees, we commit ourselves to repatriation of profits in foreign exchange. So yeah, these are the three lessons that we can learn from these three ways of IPP installations. The third one is the most difficult to implement because otherwise no foreign investor will set foot in Pakistan. But the logic points this way.
Yeah, no, that's. I think we have beaten up this topic as much as we can. We could. I think we should move on to the other topic because you've been heading the Senate Committee of Commerce. I think it is an axiomatic truth that no country can stay aloof from its neighbors, especially if the powerful neighbors like China and India. And the trade is the most important thing. That is how the wealth creation will come. I know that the difficulties with the Pakistani relationship with India, but it looks like that the ice has melted, and maybe there are backdoor channels going on with this SCO summit. And do you think that Pakistan's trade with India could resume in some shape and form in the times to come?
Not in the short medium term, because back in 2014, when I was Commerce Minister, early 2014, that's 10 years ago, we came very close to restoring normalcy in trade ties. But that didn't happen, and no progress has been made in the last 10.5 years. mainly because Narendra Modi's government's anti-Pakistan and Muslim baiting and war-mongering stance, because they think their vote system for it. But the logic of trade is very clear. So whenever it happens, it will benefit both sides, for Pakistan more. That's the thing. But then there became a barrier 5 years ago, which didn't exist before, was this 5 August 2019 issue of India's cancellation of Kashmir's special status, Article 37. So unless we get an acknowledgement from India that this issue is very much there, we believe it is very much there. It's part of the international community's unfinished agenda. But trade in some form could be resumed, particularly around LOC. The LOC trade could be resumed, or as part of the continuous building measures around LOC, instead of starting this formal Pakistan-India trade. But that is a long distance away. I think in the short term, the best we can hope for is that both countries send their high commissions back to their respective host countries, and then as part two, we restore the high commissions to their full strength, and maybe perhaps through a back channel begin to talk about how to deal with these issues. Although the trade argument is very strong across the world, but Pakistan is, I wouldn't say cursed, but at least challenged with probably one of the toughest neighborhoods anyone can imagine. Afghanistan has its own set of problems. Iran has its own set of problems internationally. With India, we have our own problems. The only border the two borders that are relatively usable for us for trade is the northern border with China and what I call the southern border with the Middle East, because we are a few miles away from the Middle East, not too far away. So these two are the ones that we need to concentrate on in the short term, while opening doors, because until there is some softening in the relationship, and that really has to come from India, because India, being the larger partner, has to have the courage and the sensibility to take other countries along. And unfortunately, India has demonstrated that it might aspire to great power status, but it doesn't have the generosity of spirit that great powers have to demonstrate to their neighbors. So we are some distance away from restoration of trade relations.
The stated policy of the state of Pakistan after 5th August 2019 was that they cut pretty much all bilateral contacts, including bringing their high commissions back. Now, and since then it has not started. So do you think the deep state or the establishment of the state of Pakistan is softening its stance on it, that, okay, we have our differences, we have all of this, but at least let's start some trade? Is it your personal opinion, or is this the policy of the government?
No, I don't think trade is currently on the menu. I think for the very short term, just the restoration of diplomatic relations would happen if it happened upon. Again, learning from China, India, who had a mini skirmish 4 years ago, but still maintain embassies, and despite their adversarial relations, have
multi-billion-dollar trade with each other.
Yeah. Similarly, China, Taiwan have a massive trade with each other.
Yeah.
So the examples are there that countries might have political differences or territorial disputes can still trade with each other. But again, I would say until India learns that this continuous war mongering against Pakistan, and its very prejudicial stance, which has now been codified into law against Muslims in India. That rhetoric changes, it will be very difficult to even move towards trade.
But I think the leadership must take difficult but bold steps. I don't think that any government should be looking for the reaction from another government. You need to show magnanimity and going at the charm offensive, so to say, that the late General Ziaul did in 1987 vis-a-vis Rajiv Gandhi. I think people all over the world, especially in our geography, and you're right, Pakistan is nestled in a very important geography which is very challenging, but actually there's an opportunity there. And you also probably, you might have considered the Kars Central Asian republics. The next, the gas reserve is there, and the Wakhan border is only 20 kilometer wide, and then we go into the Central Asian Republic. I think there's a huge development in this area, and I think that the time has come. I've been speaking to some intellectuals here, both from India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, and I think people are really thinking that, look, bygone is bygone. Let's start something there that actually bring the people together. Because if the trade starts and the people come together, the hostilities of the state, they dissipate automatically. And I think in that way, and especially that your previous Prime Minister, Nawaz Sharif, your leader, he was very successful in bringing Prime Minister of India, Vajpayee, to Pakistan. So do you think you are at a position you can take such bold steps to bring peace and some kind of a tranquility between India and Pakistan?
I think there is greater prospect of trading in a more stable manner with Central Asia than it is with India at the moment. Because India's behavior, and not just with Pakistan, towards all its neighbors, has been arrogant. And as if they don't need their neighbors, they can be a great power without first in being able to manage their neighborhood. And so that's a decision for India to take, but where we have more, I think, leeway in being magnanimous is with Afghanistan and through Afghanistan with Central Asia. And that's where the future of Pakistan, at least the near future of Pakistan diplomacy lies, is to, first of all, where it comes to Afghanistan, to even show one-sided magnanimity when the other side is not willing to show it at the moment. But for the long term, that's where the vision is needed. But India is still, to my view, a thorny subject because we cannot begin to normalize relations until India takes a step forward. The last step that the BJP government Narendra Modi took forward was their December 2015 visit to Lahore. Unannounced, unplanned, and rather precipitate. And it didn't bring the right benefits that were needed because it hadn't been planned before. So since that's now nearly 9 years that it happened, so India has to rethink how it wants to deal, not with Pakistan, but with the whole South Asia. And some people in India are now writing about the end of South Asia, that maybe it's not a region, actually, it's just a geographical designation, because its people, for better or for worse, don't trade with each other, don't travel to each other's countries, and have very sketchy relations with each other, despite having tremendous cultural affinities with each other.
An historic.
So it's something that, historic relationship, a cultural relationship, a trade relationship through the Silk Road. But yes, I think it's, as I see it, Pakistan has offered talks to India one too many times. And so it's time to stop offering talks and say that we are ready. We are not against talks, but India has to take the first initiative.
Okay, I think it's a bit belligerent stance. I would rather like us to think over and beyond that, but let's leave it there. just moving on to more earthly affairs about the current situation, the political situation. There are two very thorny questions that I'll have to ask. One is this, that it's heartening to see the first female Chief Minister, Mariam Nawaz Sharif, taking over a chief ministership in Punjab. Then this news about a rape of a very unfortunate, and I'm not sure it's a rumor or not, but somehow it has become quite a big issue. I've wanted to speak to you about the general issues, but I think that this interview will be incomplete without your view or your party's view, what's happening in Lahore and what is the truth behind.
The truth is that no such incident took place. And somehow in the 21st century, we have renamed blatant lies as disinformation. And we call lies fake news. Then that's what they are. They are sheer lies, which were then used as propaganda by one particular party to what they thought was foment a Bangladesh-style revolution and bring the students out into the streets. No such event happened, but what did happen as a consequence, that these so-called protesting students killed a security guard in Gujarat. Okay. And so if there is any victim, the victim is the family of the late departed, I think his name was Azhar Hussain and Wazir Hussain in Gujarat, who was killed by these protesting students. And this sense of, and I think I want to say a word on this. Yes, protest is a constitutional right. And everyone saying left and right seems to assert that yes, this is our constitutional right and we have to protest. But the truth is that Article 19, which gives the right of the freedom of expression, explicitly excludes incitement to an offense. That is not protected. That doesn't have constitutional protection, apart from other national security, other integrity of Pakistan. But incitement to offense is prohibited. It is not, aini haq nahi hai, Gaj.
It's alarming, really, and saddening that, if there's such something like this.
So Mariam Nawaz was doing a tremendous job in Punjab by, first of all, being a woman prime minister. She is delivering on a promise to show a more caring face of the government. And which is more attuned to human development priorities, which is more attuned to gender issues and what women of Pakistan face when they go out into the workplace, what children face when they go out into society. And so she is doing a hitherto unknown job that we never seen any chief minister perform. I mean, we have had Shahbaz Sharif, who was tremendous in law and order and infrastructure. But he's now not only taking care of the, let's say, health issues or health delivery, but also with a more caring stance, which is something that is a new thing in Pakistani politics. And that's why she had to, although I felt that maybe why the chief minister herself has to come, but she felt strongly that this is something that needed her direct personal intervention to assure the people that this was a lie, this was fake news, that no such event happened. But in the 21st century, by the time the truth ties its shoelaces, lies have gone twice around the world. So that's where we are. The propaganda is so strong. And what we need to realize, what I said earlier about Article 19 is that propaganda is not harmless. That there is a link, if there is a political party willing to exploit it, that because of that propaganda, one Pakistani has died. Because of that propaganda, property worth hundreds of millions has been destroyed by these students. Because of that propaganda, lives of other Pakistanis have been hampered. They have been stopped from going to their jobs, going to seek healthcare, seek education, because there was a law and order issue in many cities. So this idea that, ehtijaj aini haq hai, hame kyun nahi, if that ehtijaj or that protest leads to, offenses, leads to killing, leads to destruction of property, we have to call it as it is and say that this ehtijaj is unconstitutional, and this ehtijaj is actually a disruption of law and order. It has to be dealt with like a crime.
No, I agree with you. The rights come with responsibilities and the duties as well. And I think so. Let's swiftly moving on from there. The general atmosphere in Pakistan, there's a lot of news we hear that there is actually crackdown on the opposition, especially the PTI of Imran Khan, and he is there with over 200 cases, which is unprecedented on itself. And I know that you were a very strong advocate against the interruptions, but what you call the authorities or the deep state. And you have actually said it several times when you were on the wrong side of the stick, basically. Now, there is this perception that what is happening, that the Pakistani establishment is behind it, and your government is just being used as a probably puppet, like exactly what your government said against Imran Khan. So what do you make out of this perception, which is really, really plaguing the nation? And we have seen division to such level between the party that it looks like a tribal animosity, which is obviously is not good for either the government or the politics or the people of Pakistan.
We are in a strange place. And particularly PMLN finds itself in a strange place. Essentially, we're walking a tightrope on which one side there is military dictatorship that we've had for so many years, more than 4 decades in this country. But now the other side is also, which is Imrani fascism, a party that wants to use democracy to destroy democracy. With the rights that they have, like this right to protest or the freedom of speech, they want to destroy it, just like the Nazi party in Germany. They want to use the rights under the democracy to destroy democracy. That's how they ruled when they were between 2018 and 22. So what does one do? It's this issue of walking this tightrope and first stabilizing Pakistan's economy, then hopefully its politics. And maybe in 3 to 4 years' time, when an election comes along, we can begin to take new steps. We have taken some steps before, but they haven't new steps towards fulfilling the promise that is written on the first page of the Constitution, which is that the highest authority lies with Allah Almighty, but after Allah Almighty, in this state, the highest authority will lie with the chosen representatives of the people. So that's the aim, this civilian preponderance over the state. But in order to reach that, we have to have this very difficult period, which causes many Democrats a lot of issues and problems. But maybe it's just like what happened in Germany in late 20s, early 30s, in which democracy was used to destroy democracy. I'm actually very alarmed, having read history or have drawn some lessons from it, is how to maintain our democratic and civil constitutional rights, while at the same time trying to manage a fascist party which ultimately wants to destroy democracy in this country. So that's the dilemma. Dr. The truth is there are no easy answers. There are no easy answers on this side, or that side, or that side. We all have to find this way. And that's why I think the first glimmer of hope that we have seen over the last 7 months is that, alhamdulillah, the economy is showing signs of stabilization. The massive inflation that we had a year ago has subsided, alhamdulillah. Our foreign exchange reserves, the remittances by overseas Pakistani are showing healthy gains. And overall, that kind of panic that we used to have about Pak-European Pakistan economy, and now the IMF program is also in place, that has all subsided. And it is this, the economic stability that we need to build on to once again steer Pakistan towards it being a republic worthy of its name.
Yeah, thank you. I just have just a couple of questions. Just one, a brief one. No country or society can progress if the women of its society or country are not respected, valued, and progress. Now, with the largest province of Pakistan headed by a female chief minister, do you think that there are special packages of empowerment of women are going to come into action soon? And because that is where the actual progress is, the human development, especially to our women in Pakistan.
Well, I'm of the belief that just ensuring equality to women would be the biggest package. To making sure that they have the opportunities to be able to function and thrive in our economy and in our society. In many ways, it's been happening. I think more people need to be aware of it. That in most of the government jobs where academic qualifications are the principal requirement, more and more women are joining because they have better academic qualifications than their male counterparts. And so if you go to many places, you will see many more women now working, even for overseas Pakistani. If you come to the airport and suddenly at FIA counters will be faced, you can very well be dealt with by a woman officer of immigration service. So yes, they have been making strides. Rural women still have much challenge to go. So just like the international study on population control, it turned out that the greatest means of population control is not an equipment or technique, it's just educating girls. And a better educated woman is the best means of population control ever devised. Similarly, that's where our challenge is, to make sure that our rural girls living in rural areas are served well when it comes to education. They have health opportunities and are able to participate like their urban counterparts in the economy and development of this country.
Thank you. So I have to really give this a bouncer question or a Parthian short, as they say. Is General Asim Munir going to get an extension? And are you and your party favoring that?
And I said it's too soon to tell, Doctor.
Well, politician to the core. So thank you very, very much for your time.
My pleasure.
You've been absolutely brilliant, very candid, and you definitely have another career in diplomacy. I can tell you that. The way you handle these questions, thank you very much. So, dear audience, you heard from Khurram Dastgir Khan, one of the bright politicians, educated with a great past and background of service to the country and to the nation. We discussed various issues, especially the price hike, which is related to the power energy sector. We delved in the women and empowerment and a couple of other current issues. And I'm happy that Khurram had been very well versed and very well articulate. So with that, we hope that the Pakistan will continue its democratic and peaceful progress and will be a star in the comity of the nation. Until next, I say goodbye and thank you very much for watching our program.